Now, most people, okay, we'll continue that one, shall we? Most people ask the first question, how long is it going to be? How long is it going to take? So we're going to work for 45 minutes till 12:45. I'll be hanging around afterwards. There's any questions that, you've thought about, you want to ask straight away, I'll be hanging around for a bit as well. But it's 45 minutes. So as Jenny mentioned, life after lockdown, strengthening our mental fitness, if that's a nice phrase to use, and looking specifically how we can adapt back into the workplace, maybe with some, hybrid working from home, because lots of change, and that's the key word today, change. So, why is Jenny using me to help you guys get even better at your mental fitness? Well, I know I don't look it, but I'm 60 years of age. I've been around quite a bit. I used to be a teacher a long time ago. And for the last 10 years, I've been a freelance speaker and trainer on mindset and mental health. And I write books on that subject, albeit for younger people, because that's what the challenges start quite early for us sometimes. And on mental health, if you look at a younger person, so much challenge these days, but we know statistically that 50% of mental illness happens before age 14 and 75 at 18. And if we can get into our early 20s without any evidence of that mental ill health, there's a great chance, right, techniques and tips and advice, we can live a very fulfilling life that's enjoyable for everybody. So we know that. And in my years working with professional people, the early interventions, the better. Offering that hope and recovery is very powerful. But some simple things that you may have thought of or not, at the right time in your life can help you massively. And that's what I intend to do today. So I'm not going to bore you with all the things that I've done. I'm rather going to talk about what we're going to do today. So no matter what we're talking about in life, we've got to have an awareness about what it is that we need to change, okay? And sadly, sometimes with well-being and mental health, people are not aware of the challenges. Hopefully, I'm going to make you aware of those challenges today. And when we could take some action, so you're doing some action today by being on this call, you'll probably do some action in the next part of the course when we have some coaching sessions. If you can do those things, awareness and action, you'll get positive change. And on that journey through there, you'll get some form of achievement and acceptance, that feedback that keeps us going, that says to us, we're doing something good here. So it's a very simple equation. And to make that even more pertinent, if you can measure that change from before to afterwards, then that'll give you even more feedback that you're doing the right things. So it's really important slide this to remember it. Okay, in the chat box then, let's just see if somebody's going to talk to me. What do you see in the background? Put in the chat box. Jenny, if you shout out to me the first right answer, and that's great. Just put in your chat box, and away we go. I'll give you some incentive. We'll give out some of my books. What are you seeing? Well, we've got some answers,
Ed's
Jenny?
coming in. Yes, we have. His face, Ed, face is on the ground. I've got to have my glasses. Lots of Eds.
Okay, face on the ground is what I'm looking for. Who's that person?
Oh, it's gone shooting. El Petit, I think.
Okay, just make a quick note of that, Jenny. I'll send a book to you for that one.
Lots. And Jagita, quite a few people. Jade, well done. Rachel.
Okay. I always say in life, it's not the first who gets there that counts, as long as you get there. But in this case, it is the first. Okay, so I'm going to put you another slide up now. Another question. Here we go. What do you see there? Okay, let's just see if we can get people thinking about this. What do you see? I'll give you a clue. If you said it out loud, it'll get you a name of a TV show.
Abby's on this one.
Jenny, coming up here.
Yeah. Abby's got it. Bill, Batman, skeletons. I'm not going to sing Sarah's entry. Marcus wants me to sing as well. I'm not doing it. Natalie, same theme tune.
Well, that is the answer, the theme tune.
Yeah.
So if it goes, nana, 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 Batman. Who was the first for that one, Jenny? Any winners on that one?
I think Abigail was on that one pretty quickly.
Okay, just a couple more. Keep us going. How about this one? Plane crashes in the Austrian-Swiss border. Where do they bury the survivors? So they cost me a fortune in books, but that's okay.
Ah, well done. It's Claire.
What did she say the answer?
She was first. There are no.
There are no survivors, because that's a terrible thing to do. The final one. Final one. Have we got an answer?
Sarah says E. She's first.
The letter E is correct. The first in earth, E, second in heaven. Brilliant. Well done, Jenny. It's nice working with a nice assistant. That's brilliant. Okay, keep where you are, folks. We'll send out books to you guys, not a problem at all. We call that extrinsic motivation, something that's extra, that's added on that you didn't really expect. Now, I want you to put in the chat box now, if you can. You can sit back and relax a little bit and just write the answer. Why are you here today? Okay. So we're going to collect this data, and this will probably more than likely inform our next sessions, because we want to deliver what you think you need. And Jenny and I will have a chat about this, and then we'll give you that information back in the form of coaching sessions and one of these sessions, which we'll do again in a few weeks' time. So if you just spend a minute or so now just writing in the chat box, why are you here? Okay. And I'll be patient. And I'll keep quiet for a second. I'll let them roll in. And it's confidential, so we're not going to talk this out loud. Okay, so you can put what you want in there. Jenny's going to take it confidentiality, so that's fine. So don't worry about that. And, while we're doing this, all the things we're going to talk about today, I'm going to keep it within this chat arena. I'm not going to pick out anybody in particular. I'm not going to share information. It's all about having that nice, safe, secure sharing environment. And I think when you get that environment, people tend to be more vulnerable and share things, and it helps our progress. Because we know with mental health that stigma, discrimination is a big part of it. And if that stops people getting support or being listened to, then that's a really big barrier that we need to overcome.
Got lots of responses coming in. I won't name people, but just to share, a lot of people are saying they're feeling overwhelmed at the moment. A lot of comments about anxiety, some nice ones about needing to adjust to the new normal. People talking about wanting to find balance, about needing some skills and solutions. And a really nice one about somebody wanting to be a better manager for their team and learning some techniques and strategies.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because you've got the majority of responses there about the self, okay, anxiety, managing the stress, and somebody, and they won't be on their own, thinking about how they can take care of other people's mental health and well-being. And that's really what it comes down to, those two aspects of managing ourselves and managing other people. So we're going to use that information, and that's going to help us as we go on our journey together in the next few weeks. So let's push on with this. So what emotions might we be experiencing? Now, it's such a general question because there are general answers, but, some people will be quite depressed. We've already heard people being anxious, insecure, pessimistic. There could be people out there who are quite positive, looking at it as an opportunity. And that's always interesting. I get opposing views of things. But what I'm trying to really say to you is that there is no set answer, and every emotion you're feeling can be quite normal, and normalize it. So this first point I'm going to tell you is just to be aware of that, to accept it, and let's just see if we can eventually, maybe not today, but at some point in the future, use that to help us get that awareness, to make that change, to make our lives better and make the lives of other people better as well. So, you probably read the newspapers, and there was an article that Jenny sent me recently, and it was about the rise of a new phenomenon called COVID anxiety syndrome. Okay. If I go to the next slide, I'll just give you a bit more about this, and it links into stress And stress, you know, is it a friend? Is it a foe? Is it a combination of the two? But, you know, stress is something that we need. It was created as a term by Hans Selye in 1950. And he talked about it being a good thing to get us out of bed, to go to work, to meet people, to perform in arts, music, drama, sport. It's a good thing. But what happens if we get too much frequency, intensity, and duration? The combination of these together can really affect us emotionally and therefore mentally. And each person responds to a stress in different ways. There's no set way of responding. So that's what makes it very interesting from my point of view, how people respond to this COVID situation. And some people, you know, the article we saw there from Rosa Silverman talks about people being really extreme in their behaviors in some ways, almost bordering on obsessiveness in some aspects. So she calls it a maladaptive response to danger or risk. So an overuse of coping strategies to avoid the virus, especially those at high risk. So they might be cleaning a bit more, checking, changing clothes, avoiding people. And I'm not here to say that that's right or wrong. I'm just saying that everybody does things differently, slightly differently in COVID, depending on what you've been through in life, the thing you're experiencing at the moment. And so this is not a value judgment, and there's no judgment from me at all on this. But some people will take this response, and maybe if they do this intensity, frequency, duration of stress, which effectively is, then that could create this COVID anxiety syndrome. Yeah, I do some reading as well. And in The Guardian recently, there was an NHS psychiatrist, Miriam Alexander, and she talked about the canary in the cage. So going back to somebody said in the chat box about other people in the workplace, she said, you know, the canary in the cage is an analogy taken from when miners went down with canaries. And if the canaries were singing, the methane gas wasn't present. If the canary stopped singing and died, then the methane gas was there. That was a sign to come out of the caves. And she sees this in the NHS where you're getting people now, this canary is dying and people aren't really taking much notice of it. And it's going to catch up with people as an organization. And she was saying that collectively, we need to be on this ball more. We need to be more proactive than reacting to something, in this case, the canary that's died. So it's a really interesting phenomenon that you can put up with something for so long and you think that's okay and that's expected of me, this is what I should do in life. But really, should we take a step back and think, you know, that's not acceptable. Let's work in a different way. And that's really the part of what I'm going to talk about today, working in a different way. And another form of anxiety and stress is the long COVID and people experiencing bereavement because of it. Now, I want to transition on a little bit now, a bit more theory. We'll get into some practical details very shortly. But there's a nice little U shape here, and this is called the Kubler-Ross change curve. And this was created in the 1960s to explain, to some extent, bereavement. So if you looked at this as an overlay of bereavement, when somebody dies, there may be shock and denial that it's happened, a frustration that things have changed, and maybe a depression for some people. But other people, they may have those experiences, or they might go through to, well, this is what's happened, let's move on. How life changed, can I make my life better, can remember those people and use it in a positive way. So people's responses, again, are different, and there's no value judgment on this. If we look to this in terms of COVID, you'll see a striking similarity to how we might respond at this present time. There are some people in society who have maybe some shock about what's happening. A lot of people, probably, maybe the younger people have a denial, it's not going to affect me. It's many people in care homes. There's going to be a frustration for people. They can't do things they want to do before, their liberties have been curtailed. And some people might get anxious, stressed, and depressed. There are other people who take it, not in a bad way, but as an opportunity to experiment with the new. Can I enjoy working at home? Can I be more productive working at home? How's it going to fit in the future? So there's different responses to COVID. And I think that's a really important point when we're in the workplace together, that we don't judge people, we don't know the backgrounds, and we accept them at face value. It's a very strong point, that, and it'll take you a long way down the road of supporting and helping other people if you remember that sort of maxim. So let's just dive in there. Let's have a bit more practical overlay on this one. What are some of the warning signs for yourself and other people? Because if we can spot these warning signs, we're aware of it, then make this change, then we've got a positive outcome. So, 80% have experienced stress at work in the last 12 months. Now, a few years ago, that's 59%. Yeah. So we all know, you don't need me to tell you that statistically, people are feeling more stressed. So more importantly, what can we do about that? It's awareness, it's the body. For instance, let me give you an example. In our stomach, 90% of our what's called the serotonin receptors, that serotonin is a chemical that makes us relaxed and calm and easy. It fights anxiety. 90% are in the stomach. Now, if they're inflamed and they're pressurized and they're being challenged too often for too long, that frequency, intensity, and duration, they're not going to produce that serotonin. And that could result in maybe some stomach upsets, messages to the brain, I don't feel right, am I stressed, can I keep going? And there's a big, symbiotic relationship between the emotional side of things and the physical to the emotional. So one can cause the other, but one can feed the other as well. And again, I mentioned it very briefly before about achievement, and it's good to be achieving. As young professionals, we want to be achieving, getting out there, making our mark in the world, contributing to the company's productivity and effectiveness. But I would say to you sometimes, resilience, that ability to push or be adaptable or to win in the end is great, but you must be careful of your own self-care, because every company will want you there for a period of time where you're functioning very well. So let's not burn ourselves out. Just a little thing that I talk about sometimes, the resilience caveat. It's good, but be careful it doesn't burn you out. So what are some of the signs? Okay. Impatient, intolerant, sensitive to noise. I put those three down because that's how I respond when I'm stressed. I don't get angry or upset. I just think I want to keep away from people. I want to avoid people. I get a bit impatient. I know it's difficult to believe, but I do. But people have avoidance behaviors. Some people get angry, and anger often, not always, but often is a sign that people are anxious and depressed, and they demonstrate it as anger. So procrastination, are you putting things off quite a bit? Okay, tearfulness, catastrophizing, which is an interesting word, isn't it? Where we're thinking the worst things all the time. We'll never get out of COVID. We'll never be able to live a normal life again. I don't like the new normal. And all these are emotions that if we keep holding on to them, they're very negative, yeah? And these warning signs, these emotions, these behaviors, these physical signs, they can really affect us, yeah? So again, come back to one of those early slides I talked about, this awareness in self and in other people. Anybody else got anything? I'm just going to go to the chat box, Jenny. See if they can put some in the chat box. Any of the signs that you're seeing yourself or you're seeing other people where they might be, I don't want to say they were struggling, but they might be experiencing some mental health challenges, some sort of challenge to their well-being. So you've got some personal examples there, or anything you've seen with people?
Some coming through now, yeah.
Go on, Jenny.
Panic attacks, sweating, over talking. Natalie says frustration, lack of energy, or sleeping too much. Jess says finding it hard to concentrate. Serena can't see positives. Lack of sleep, guilt, being irritable, shaking, comfort eating. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, they're reading from a manual. Brilliant.
Being in a team of people where you're seeing shorter tempers and a stronger negative reaction. Eating bad food, palpitations, lack of interest, procrastination. When I think thinking about just one last one, actually thinking about the future and not seeing anything. That's quite a poignant comment. Well,
that is probably catastrophizing the worst case scenario, but there's a real good, rich blend of responses there. If I pick up a few themes, those changes in behaviors of eating or sleeping too much or too little is a very powerful one. Another one that's very powerful is where people are quick to lose a temper, quick to be impatient. It's almost like the level of resistance has been depleted, and so anything's going to start you off. And I think that is quite normal when you've been through a trauma, as we have been as a whole nation, as a whole world, in the last 12 months or so. And we don't know when it's going to end. And there's a guy called Rick Hansen. He's one of the world leaders on resilience. And he talks about COVID being not just a threat, an ever-changing threat. And that's what makes it difficult to deal with. So all those responses that you've added so richly to my list now is what you're seeing. And I think what I want to say to you at this point is they're normal. They're normal reactions when we've been pressurized and pushed. Intensity, frequency, and duration of real or perceived stress can have any outcome. Our job is to recognize that and be aware of it, as you have done so eloquently then. And then we're going to sort of filter into how we can make some positive changes to that. Okay, brilliant. Now, okay, if you want to have a go at this one, there are 10 simple questions. Have a go at this first. Because some of these have come out, if you think about it, some of the things you just told us are in these questions. The sleeping, the upset stomach, all that sort of stuff. But have a look through these and just make a mental note to yourself. Yes, no, yes, no, yes, 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 whatever it is. Now, I took this from, I like to keep current with my research. I took this from a good newspaper recently. And it said, when you've gone through these, and this is the interesting bit for me, when you've gone through this, if you'd said yes to 2 or more, it's a very low bar, isn't it? 2 or more, then you might be experiencing some level of stress, yeah? Now, stress gets a bad reputation. Stress can be useful, like I've said. But if we've got 2 or more, then it's thinking, okay, it's like my antenna on my head just start clicking a bit. And maybe I need to do something here. Maybe I need to go and change something. Maybe just being aware of it is very powerful. Maybe I need to go on to talk to somebody about it. Yeah. And you know what? We're on this session today and the sessions to come. You're doing all the right things. Yeah. So going back to this then, if you've got 2 or more, then that might be think, you know what, I need to actually look at this a bit more deeply and maybe change some stuff. You know, I would say if you've got, say, 8, 9, 10 of those, then you're really pushing towards that extreme, which we don't really want. And I think anything in life, if we're very proactive and recognize things, and that's all the point of today, to recognize something, then we can make some small alterations. Before it gets more severe, we might have to make more drastic alterations. So it's just a heads up to say, you know what, these are quite normal responses. If we've got a lot going at once, maybe we need to change, slow down, share the load a little bit. And that's why we're here today, to share that load a little bit. Okay, some good stuff there. Okay, I just want to this was something I talk about with mental health first aid England. And again, it comes back to the no correct responses to COVID and to working in the new environment. Because anybody, and I mean anybody, can have mental ill health, okay? And I talk about 4 quadrants here. And if you just bear with me a second, the top right is somebody, maybe most of you, probably in the top right now, with no mental illness or disorder, positive mental health, thinking, what's Ross talking about? Yeah. And, you know, I mentioned those statistics earlier on. If you get to your early 20s, there's only a smaller chance of developing some mental illness over time. And we're in a society these days where we get a lot of negatives, but if I give you some positives, our treatment for mental ill health now is so much better than it was 10 years ago. There's much more awareness, a better quality of drugs that are less addictive, a more proliferation of talking therapies that are very effective. CBT, for example, is very effective for anxiety and depression. That's why they recommend it. So as much as I'm painting a picture that we can all move around this continuum, I'm also saying to you, our responses as a society are much better than they were. So top right is where we all might want to be. Sometimes though in life, we can drop below what's called this line where we've got poor or compromised mental health. So you might have found yourself where you feel not quite 100%, you don't feel the same person. It might be because you're not sleeping as well, or eating some poor foods, or maybe drinking too much alcohol, or not getting enough in exercise, or you may be in a challenging environment, in a poor relationship. There's lots of reasons why people might drop down. And, you know, in the short term, being aware of that's very powerful. And many people recognize this. Now, you're sharp professionals. And if you recognize this, you can make some small alterations on your own or with other people, where they share the load, like I mentioned before, to pull you back up to the top right. Unfortunately, sometimes in life, if we carry on for too long doing something or something happens to us, so I'm not blaming anybody, sometimes life happens to us and hits us, we might have to have a diagnosis. And for many years, I was always in top right. And I got to age 53 and I had a series of debilitating panic attacks. We know that 1 in 8 people will experience a panic attack, and I was one of those 8 because I was just doing too much stress. I was overweight, I wasn't exercising too much, a little bit too much alcohol, my parents were dying, and I was writing books and pushing myself. That resilience I kept talking about before and the caveat, well, I fell right down that hole. So I ended up in bottom left, where I needed a diagnosis. You're having panic attacks, you can have some talking therapies, or here's some citalopram, take this. And eventually I got through the middle line of stigma. I thought, I need this, I need to take it. And I moved up to top left, felt great very quickly. And over the course of a year or so, came off the tablets, and within 18 months, I had to transition back to the right. So I'm just one case. So what I'm trying to say to you here, that your mental health could change. It might stay right all the time, okay? But you might move around, but from awareness for yourself, support from other people, we're going to transition in a good way. And recovery and positivity are always powerful. So I've been there, I've done that, and I'm telling you, recovery is always possible. I would almost say inevitable in many cases. Now, some people mentioned before about anxiety. I want to give you a quick snapshot into anxiety, what happens. Because when we have this fear, it can happen without us noticing it, but our behaviors could change. And sometimes a fear can happen so fast that it shocks our brain, and our prefrontal cortex, the bit we think with and be rational and logical, gets hijacked. Chemicals, adrenaline, the fight or flight hormone, and cortisol, the actual stress hormone, which in small amounts are good for us, if they hijack our brain, a lot's released in milliseconds, it can make us feel panicky, yeah? And this instant feeling of panic can become a regular feature of our lives if we don't watch it. So in our brains, you won't know this, but chemicals are being flushed to stop you thinking, to be rational and logical, to stop you becoming the professionals that you're going to become. Being aware of this is very powerful. And so a lot of the things I talk about is all about breathing and awareness. So if this might happen to us, okay, where we go from, a low emotion, where that's like a thermometer is quite low of cortisol and adrenaline, it can go very fast to the high bits, yeah? Now, if you want a nice quick fix, okay, a nice quick fix, come back in a second, might be some breathing exercises. So a good one is when I put the hand up and you breathe in and breathe out. Breathe in and breathe out. Okay, now breathing, it stimulates what's called the parasympathetic, the vagus nerve. And in the body is a general impact. It slows things down. So it's going to slow that production of cortisol and adrenaline down, which is exactly what we want. Okay, so anything like this is a great way just to catch yourself. Another one is the box breathing. We breathe in, we hold, we breathe out, and we could do another simple exercise going, so breathe in, hold, breathe out. Another one is butterfly breathing, where you put the hands on the chest and you just try to sink with your pulse, breathe in and out. And it's a good one, and I use this with young people a lot because I get them to actually put it on the shoulders or on the top of the stomach, where that stomach can go upset and feel that pulsing. So if you do it now, you might be able to feel a bit of pulsing in your stomach, okay? And this is just to get it in sync, to slow it down, and we call it naming it, yeah, to tame it. So you're saying, I know what's happening. I know it's that amygdala going off in my brain. It's starting off around the stomach area. It's the cortisol and adrenaline. I know it. I'm not being scared. And I can just bring it down. And there's other things we can do as well, which and I pass over to Jenny as resources and strategies. But another one is looking at like leads on a stream, for instance, and looking at your troubles float away. And when they float away on a stream, they're not going to come back, okay, because they're going in one direction. If you visualize something, there's a better chance of that happening rather than catastrophizing, thinking the worst. Yeah. There's another one which I haven't put on here, but I'm going to do for you now, is a quick breathing exercise using sport. And you might see people when they play rugby kicking the ball over the goals, they do have a certain peculiar routine. And it's based on what's called NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. And so what you'll see is somebody ready to kick a ball, but breathing in. Then for your purposes now, I'll show you an aversion that you'll understand. So you breathe in and you open your fingers up. And as you breathe out, you squeeze them in and breathe out. Now that process is called anchoring a positive thought. So every time you get stressed, or you're thinking you get stressed, well, that stomach's going, and you feel that bit of uneasiness, and it sets you, it grounds you, it anchors you to carry on with the rest of your life. It's a very powerful one to do. Okay, let's just check on the clock there. We've got 15 minutes left. Let's just put this knowledge we've got now into application. So we've got the workplace environment, okay? You will have known expectations of yourself and maybe unknown expectations, okay? It's important to recognize that, because they can drive us and they can hinder us. And I talk about self-rewards, and with that achievement orientation in place, I think it's important to, especially in this COVID environment, to use a little maxim that I use, and I say this very carefully, is that if I do too much and I can work all the time, push, and write books, read articles, present stuff, and I'm pretty good at what I do, but I know now when my limits are coming up. So I have a little maxim to remind me. So it's something like this. Expect just a touch less of yourself within COVID and raise your rewards a bit more. Okay, I'll say that again for you. Just expect a bit less of yourself, yeah, but raise your rewards a bit more. And it's something about keeping the right side of that stress equation. It just gives you a bit more credibility. It makes you aware that, you know what, you're doing a good job, but we don't have to go to the max every day. So co-workers and leaders' mindset, somebody's mentioned it already, thinking about somebody else in the workplace. And, the frame of reference. I mentioned this very briefly. I'm just going to touch on it again now. A frame of reference means that, for instance, I don't know all the things that Jenny's been through in her life. I don't know her professional achievements or family or relationships, and I don't need to know that. But it makes me think that I can't judge anybody. And I'll just take you on face value. And if I can support your will do, and I won't make any judgments, oh, come on, Jenny, just get on with it. Or Jenny, just get on with this and just do that. I'm not going to make those assumptions. And a lot of people do that in a nice way. You're almost talking cliches, but it can be quite unhelpful to put expectations on other people of your standards. So I don't have any expectations of Jenny in terms of my standards. So I just, can I help? Do you want me to do this? Do you want me to do that? Everything okay at the moment? Let's have a coffee, whatever it is. I ain't going to judge you. If I don't judge anybody, there's a very good chance that they might trust me. If they're going to trust me, they might be vulnerable and share stuff with me. Even though I might not fix it, yeah, they might think it was good just to share that with Ross, because I know he's not going to judge me. He's not going to tell me loads of things I must be doing or not doing. I don't want to feel like I've done something wrong, because that's adding to my stress. So the frame of reference, everybody's got a different one. And the key word with that is not to judge. Okay. So that's a frame of reference. Everybody's got a different one. We know that if you're female, here's an interesting stat for you. If you're a female, you're more vulnerable to mental illness. That could be because women perhaps go to doctors more and maybe get more statistically diagnosed, where men tend to hold things in more and don't share as much. But we know statistically, and on the data we've got, that, for instance, on most psychiatric conditions, women present more highly than men, except where men involve themselves in drugs and alcohol And that could precipitate, sadly, suicidal behavior. Now, that sounds very dramatic, but it's a fact. And I don't want to shy away from the facts. To give you a little example, anxiety in this country, there's about 26% of women who are diagnosed of some form of anxiety, where men's around 12%. So we can see the difference in that. There's lots of differences in there, and it's another reason why we don't judge people, yeah? But if I was in the workplace, I'd be looking very carefully to listen to people, to engage with them, to support them. And again, I'll say it again to you guys, you don't always have to solve anything. Just being the sympathetic, or better words, probably empathetic here, where I'm understanding you, I'm hearing you, I'm not judging you. I won't spend too long on that, so I want to give you something to work. And there's something to work on is the workplace environment. So picking up on some of the themes I've talked about already, non-judgmental, respecting people's space, physical space in the workplace, yeah? Sharing equipment, social area, work area, gossiping. Oh, that person's not at work this week. Oh, have they fallen foul of COVID? Are they too scared to come in? And perpetuating that judgmental viewpoint is very counterproductive for everybody. Talking at or with, okay? Do you talk at somebody or with them? Do you listen to understand or listen to interrupt? Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Yeah, in the workplace. What do people need to survive or thrive? Yeah. Sometimes I just want somebody with me, just to understand me. Sometimes I might want for some supporting guidance, someone to go some exercise with, to do something with. It just depends. And just a quick one before I give you a little challenge. There's a woman called Paula Davis. She used to be a corporate high flyer, and she found herself increasingly going to work and stepping outside a car and realizing that she wasn't presenting her real self to the workplace. She was holding things in, all this stress and emotion. And it got to the point where if she didn't change something, this awareness and change, she would have to have a mental, I don't call it breakdown, but a mental compromise. She changed. And now she's a mental health advocate. She goes all around the world preaching about how stress is important, but how it can be so counterproductive. So a simple question for you guys. Do you bring your whole self to work, or do you hide things? Because over time, hiding things can really hurt us. Okay, so I want you to think about this now, and we don't have to finish it off today, but 5 things based on the last 40 minutes, you're going to do differently for yourself and for other people. Yeah. So this could be for yourself at home, for yourself at the workplace, for others at the workplace. Yeah. Have a think for a second. If you want to share something through the chat box now, that's a good time to do it. But there's no rush to complete this. This is like the start of a template for you guys to start changing your behavior. Now we've made you more aware of some of the things out there. You're going to take the responsibility on and act on it to get positive change. So just have a think for a second. I'll keep quiet for a second. We just write some stuff down. If Jenny wants to relay that to me, she can do anonymously, but have a think.
Some lovely comments coming through around listening and actually listening, not just hearing.
Brilliant.
Several people have commented on the breathing exercises have been a very helpful way to address anxiety. And nice comments about people looking out for others more and taking a moment. I like that one from Gabriella, taking a moment to think about what I'm hearing.
Let me give you a silly fact then. Apparently we spend about 6 months of our lives at traffic lights in our cars, yeah? So why accept that dead time? Why not do some breathing exercise at traffic lights? Keep concentrating the roads okay, of course, but you've got 6 months there to play with. If you're going to live, average age of men living is about 79, average age of women is about 82. You've got a lot of time, 6 months. So maybe some breathing exercise, start them off in the car and see how it goes. I like that one. It's a quick fix that might become a lifetime habit. Everybody talks about mindfulness, being in the moment. That's part of it.
So okay, that's gone down well, Ross. People like the traffic light suggestion.
Yeah, it's probably me as I'm getting older and time's getting more precious. How can I max it all out without achieving too much, trying to burn myself out? And that's what I've learned in life. that it's great to go with all guns blazing, but you want some ammunition left as you go through life. Yeah. And I've learned that, not in a hard way, but I've learned it in a tough way. And now I realize it's about balance and flow. Okay, I'm going to leave that there for a second. And it's good that we're getting some feedback together and we're hitting a note. Okay, let's just move on a little bit. So I've got an interesting couple of slides to finish off with. So, you know, I do these presentations to a few different groups, and what I put on here is a more intellectual expression of taking 5. Okay, we're gonna dive into this, not today, but we might dive into it on your individual coaching sessions. What is optimal sleep and nutrition and exercise? Yeah, expressing our emotions is a powerful way to maintain and improve our mental health and well-being. So again, I'll give you an example. I am pretty physically fit. Emotionally, I'm very fit. I'm top right category of that quadrant we talked about. But being proactive and aware, I don't really talk to anybody about how I'm feeling. Yeah. And that's one of my weaknesses, but I'm aware of it. I need to change that, because otherwise that stress can get out of proportion. And very quickly I could be thinking the worst things when actually it's not that bad at all. So a spiritual thing means appreciating the now, the moment, how you're feeling, catching that glimpse of the sun shining, or a friend laughing at one of your jokes. Yeah, being connected is very powerful. If you want to be connected, join a choir. You don't have to be able to sing, but if you can join a choir, you feel a connection. And that connection actually can help pain management as well. There's some evidence for you to suggest that. So there's some good things in there. Again, this is your presentation. You look at this, and we're going to delve into this further. I'm just sort of whetting your appetite for the future. Okay, chat box time, Jenny. Who is this person on the screen?
Okay, I'm watching. Chiquita, straight out. Jeff Bezos.
Jeff Bezos. Okay. Now, Jeff Bezos, well done. This is going to link back to what somebody said at the start about this work-life balance. Now, Jeff Bezos is the founder and instigator and driving force behind Amazon. He's the richest man in the world. Let's just call it out there. And he doesn't like this phrase, work-life balance. It suggests to him that you're gaining one but losing the other, a negative symbiotic relationship. He prefers the phrase work-life harmony. So when you're doing well at work, it fuels your wellness at home. If you're doing well at home, it fuels your wellness at work. And that makes sense, doesn't it? If things are going well at home, everything's good, you've got a nice, comfy house, relationship or not, but you feel good, whatever it is, you're going to work and you've got plenty of capacity to take on somebody else's challenges, to listen to people, to produce your work well and effectively, to learn, to support people. Everything, it's a win-win. And if you're talking about leaders in the world, Stephen Covey always talks about win-win. So Jeff Bezos says it's the work-life harmony. And he says, you'll know you've got it right when you walk into a room, either at work or at home, and you see the response from people. And if that response is positive and smiling and laughing and joking and probably basically upbeat, you've got it right. If it's not that response, you need to maybe look at yourself and think, I might need to change something. So every time I meet people, I'm always trying to, try and be my normal self, trying to be positive, look for the upsides, and everything's a work in progress. And this guy, I'd listen to him, because you can't be doing something at the expense of something else, because eventually it's going to show. And going back to our theory, you've got to start a little journey around that mental health continuum, which we don't want to happen. So I don't want to talk about advice. But that's a good observation, shall we say, from Jeff Bezos. When you go into a room, does it light up or does it dim down? That's an easy way of thinking about it.
Ross, we're just almost out of time, just to let you know.
Good. So on that note, here's a reference point for you on the presentation. If you want a bit more information about yourself, your well-being score, we had a 10-question stress test before, which is fine. If you want a bit more in-depth and a bit more intellectual, here's one which you've got in the presentation, and you've got a scoring system as well. All I'd say on this one, the only thing I would say is don't compare with anybody else. Do it this week and do it at the end of the course and see if it's changed. And finally, if you need more support, It's there for you. I'm going to stop talking and hand over to Jenny.
That was such a helpful session. Thank you, Ross. Particularly this week, I always learn things from you, and I'll take on butterfly breathing definitely. But just to let everybody know what we're doing next to continue to support you. So we're going to have some free coaching sessions available with Ross. And there'll be approximately a week after each of the sessions that we run. There'll be 3 of these seminars. And the first of the coaching session afternoons is on the 19th of May. And there are 25-minute appointments available that you can arrange by emailing my colleague Nicola Pimlott, whose email address is there on screen, nicola.pimlott@kaplan.co.uk, and she'll send you the booking form. It's just first come, first served, and it's a confidential one-to-one with Ross. We've also got lots of support on our microsites on wellbeing and the Kaplan website, so do have a look at those. And finally, if there's anything really serious that you need us to help you with, then we've got a safeguarding contact email address there, safeguarding@kaplan.co.uk. But the next overall session with Ross, where we're going to explore mental fitness in the long term a little bit more, is on Thursday the 10th of June, again at 12, and we're really looking forward to seeing you again then. We'll ask you at that one for your suggestions for the 3rd session. So have a think about what you would like us to cover in the last of the sessions, and we'll tailor it as much as possible to the collective view. But for now, I'd just like to wish you all a very happy rest of Mental Health Awareness Week, and to express my thanks to you all for participating so much in the chat. That was great to see, and to Ross for your expertise. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Jenny.